Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Doppler's Gear Garage. It's another Saturday. First of all the fathers in the house, happy Father's Day weekend. Melissa Doppler, the Doppler'S are in the house. In any case, I am Doug Doppler, in case we haven't met, and this is Doppler's Gear Garage, where basically it's kind of like an office hours for all my friends and family across the World Wide Web and all my friends from the various guitar camps. And so wherever it is that you might be coming from, maybe ever jump in the chat and say hello. And let me just make sure that everything is streaming appropriately. Looks like things are good. Yes, they are. So, all right, first of all, hello, hello, hello. Have we got a show for you? So, I am back from a little live playing in Los Angeles, and as always, I have a couple of folks, Chris Alexander and this time Mr. Luke Casey, who have funneled through some questions for me. So I'm going to kind of jump into those as well as any questions that you might have. First of all, Chris has been a little under the weather, so Chris, we want to wish you a very speedy recovery, and so I hope you're feeling better today. Chris always brings some great questions, and so I love that I'm able to go into this show kind of having a little bit of an idea of where I'm going. So let me get there. Is there a... wait, no, that's not Chris's question. How do I name instrumental songs? That's a really interesting thing, because sometimes, you look at the names of instrumental songs and you're like, huh? And that's kind of got an old school vibe to it. So I was like, that's it, old school. So quite often it's just kind of a feeling that ruminates out of the piece of material that comes to life. There is another song that in a minute I'm going to kind of talk about my gear and that. And just, there's a bunch of things that I'm in the process of fine-tuning, which gets us to the next question. Do I have any pre-show rituals? It's a great question. And that is definitely a yes. And first of all, Nandini, hello. Great to see you. We are dog fathers here in the Doppler household, so we are also celebrating a happy Father's Day. Brett, great to see you as well. Hello, hello, hello. So in terms of a pre-show ritual, this is one of the things that I do so that I don't leave the house missing something that I'm really going to wish I had. I put together, you can't really see it here, but you can over here. There you go. I put together this rather kind of crazy rig here, and without the help of this list, it's always possible that I might forget something that I might need to bring to the show. So V1 and V2 on the outside of my two main flying V cases, basically this and a hot swappable backup. I've got a little sticker that says V1 and V2 so I know which guitar is which. That way, in case I'm leaving the house, I'm only going to grab one. V1 only goes, and I always check, in V. This is being V1, of course, only goes in the V1 case, so I can always know that that's the guitar I'm going to grab. Strings, a mandatory plus. And then tools. That way, as I need to put the new strings on, I've got something to cut the ends of the strings off. Kind of a help. The boogie head, cab clone IR, and the power. So this is the thing. It's you ever show up someplace with the device and you're like, where's the power supply? So that little note and power at the end of all of that little business right there. You probably can't see it, but there you go. And power. That reminds me not to forget that. The rack. You'd be amazed. I haven't used a rack live for a while, so to be doing that. Both boogie cabs. The case. I don't know what that's the case for. That's probably for the looper. And this is an earlier version, case cables in the FM9, so I ended up not using the FM9. But the point being is that that little gig preparedness list means that I'm thinking about all the stuff that I, off the top of my head, know I need to bring. And I will usually leave that on the kitchen table, and I will just kind of allow myself to kind of keep coming back to it and adding stuff that in the initial moment that I created the list allows me to add things that I might have otherwise forgotten. And that little ritual will pay huge dividends in the scheme of being able to show up wherever it is you're going to go to. At this particular gig, we kind of took an extended stay kind of hotel room. One, so we can have the benefit of being able to cook ourselves. Number two, it allowed me to have a little extra room to set up my rig, which I probably would have done regardless of the size of the space, probably stacking some tables or something or chairs on each other just so I can get all the cabinets and stuff in. So those are those are kind of the practical side of that. Because in this moment, some of these gigs I'm doing are playing with loops. I need to make sure I bring the looper and a laptop, and I also brought some in-ear monitors, which at the gig were vital. Kind of at the last minute, I uploaded some different versions of the tracks to my looper, and when I got to the gig, I was able to put in my in-ear monitors that I had in my pocket and double check that I had programmed something in the loop right, such that instead of all the loops, which by default, if you press play on one, they'll all play at the same time, which is not the desired effect. The idea for me is I want to have separate sections for each of the different sections of the songs. So with that in mind, I was able to test it and then just go in and fix that. That was a lifesaver. Yes, Brett, the pre-show rituals, it is a vital thing that allows me to go in and not kind of go, oh man, do I have to make a last minute run to a music store? Do I have everything that I need? And because at this point, so much of what I'm doing because of the loops is tethered to technology, I got to have all the pieces that I need. This list is a ritual. I always do it because if I don't, I'll forget something, and that's bad. So pre-show live or pre-show for Doppler's Gear Garage, Melissa Doppler says. That's a great question. I do have rituals for this as well. Before and during, I forgot to raise them. Ladies and gentlemen, to you and to the fathers in the house. Okay. So Mike Mitchell, hello. Brett, is it ever too late to follow your dream? Or it's never too late to follow your dream, my bad. The destination is part of the journey. Very proud of you, Doug. Brett, many thanks. You have no idea how much that sentiment resonates deeply. So thank you for that. Griffin, good morning. And there's enough characters on this that if I bring it in, I'll just show you. It starts to get really small. So if I don't bring you in, that's why. Morning, happy Dog Day, Father's Day to y'all. Best multi-guitar travel case in my opinion. I have, you can't see it, and I can do this. Hang on. It's like, will you be able to see it? Well, I can at least try. Hang on. I can at least try. So Fender makes these amazing kind of portable guitar case dealios that I keep on those little kind of roller things that you can buy at Home Depot. There you go. You can see the top of it. And this one is kind of in the tweed flavor. I feel like Vanna Doppler or something like that. So the great thing about this is because it's on those Home Depot roller carts, I can roll these guys around the studio. And I literally just kind of added a third one down here yesterday that's kind of Fenderville because it enables me to, with the Flying V, what's great about this, like in that photo there, because it's got the flat feet here, if you will. I call these the feet. I don't know what you would call them. But, you can lean it up against just about anything, and so long as you don't kind of keep it too perpendicular to the floor. I never worry about it falling, but I'm always careful not to put it on the other side of something. Well, actually, just like I did here in this picture below, I actually did. I try not to put it on something that has wheels on the other side. So that is to say, a big part of, thank you, I almost forgot. I can't show it to you. Oh, good. Yes, I can. So this is one of my rituals right here. You can't see it super tight, but that is me. I will take on the edge of the cabinet there, and then on this little kind of rack end right there, I will kind of bring an extra wrap of the cable. So I'm always trying to make extra careful that in case I happen to catch a foot or somebody else catches a foot on a cable, that it first of all doesn't destroy the input jack on the boogie there, and it's just a little bit of extra safety. So per that guitar down below there, it's leaning against the boogie thing. So I know that thing's probably not going to get moved, but anything that's on wheels that you can be on the other side of and not see what's on the front side of it, and you move that, that guitar will fall. So that actually kind of violates, if you will, kind of one of the unspoken rules of the studio here, which is like if I can't see it and it can roll, I try not to put the guitar leaning up against it, because my habit is, just to my right here, although you won't be able to see it, I basically lean this thing up against the desk. And speaking of rituals, what that means is that I can put on a track. And kind of about like that throughout the entire course of the day. Anytime that I want to play, I'm able to play. And that is kind of actually one of my rituals, because at this point, and I know you know what I'm talking about, any of you, there's a point where you kind of jump into your groove, right? You know, you're in the flow, all these things that some days you kind of pick up and you feel like you're fighting your way through your technique, and the notes and the wrong notes seem to be appearing as easily or more easily than the good ones. And so the end result of just kind of living, kind of, if you will, plugged in, I'm just, and I have pieces of music that I've got ready to go to that I jam with all day long. And so it just means that I'm constantly in the process of being in the recording process, also doing things to stimulate my playing, which is really, really, really important to me. So great questions, and really, 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 these are, the funny thing is that, I'm at a very important, Brett, I'm going to kind of dig deep. And first of all, hello to all the new folks that have jumped in. Super excited to see you here, but let me get a little bit further along here before I jump into all of that goodness. In any case, for those of you that are just joining me, if you weren't here when I raised them up, here's to you. And I splashed my nose the second time in a row. So, I was saying to Melissa yesterday that I've had the unique privilege of being able to pivot in my career at a point that most people who are 58 years old are not afforded the ability to do. That would not have been possible without you. And I'm deeply grateful for that, because we had conversations like, I don't know, this is kind of like, it's like, if I were the Queen Mary, this boat's been cruising along for a while in this direction. And to make such a dramatic pivot and have so many people be so wonderfully affectionate about their support has been awesome. So I won't go any further other than to say thank you. Steve Christian, hello. Craig Parker, what's going on? Fathers with kids that have paws, I love that. Travel standers and gig bagger stand. Melissa is always great. She always helps me clarify, kind of like, what do you mean? So here's the thing is that I don't generally use music stands if I can avoid it. That does not mean I do not possess a couple in here that I can see right around me. And if I have to be toggling between a couple of guitars as I'm potentially overdubbing, which is kind of the season I'm about to step into in a serious way, I may put one of them, on very close to me that's not a flying V in a stand. But stands are not to be trusted. And so if you've ever had a guitar fall out of a stand, you'll know what I'm talking about. And it's in this particular place is like I've had a guitar that was in a stand that actually fell here that was on loan from a friend, which is just like the mortal sin. And because of where I was sitting, I couldn't get to it. Guitar is fine, but it did take a little nick. It actually hit greeny. But I feel the responsibility of borrowed gear way more than my own. And I am actually happy to say I can see nicks and stuff showing up on this guitar, which I'm very excited about. What I didn't do before the last gig was I didn't give this thing a good polish, which is really kind of bad gig etiquette. That should be part of my ritual. It's not until you see the video back you're going to go, what a sloppy thing to do. Jason, did I have fun during my recent show with, first of all, great to see you. Great guitar player, great video guy, Jason Price. Squad Car 57, as I recall, is his nick. I saw a couple of Click You Trading solos. That was epic. First of all, thanks for joining us. Thanks for jumping into the thing. So I was saying to Melissa just a few minutes ago, and this is one of the most important things about maybe what I might be able to share with you. We experience a range of things when we're playing and studying the instrument. Not all those feelings are good feelings. Those not good feelings are actually very important because they allow us to validate the inbox of things that we need to be working on. But ideally, we should be at a place, and this is kind of where this always on business kind of comes in, where when we pick up the instrument, that there is a, and this is kind of gets to Al's question. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Excuse me, Tony. So this is my problem. I've known an Al Lucchese who owns Soundwave Studios, where we're going to be doing the rehearsal spaces, and every time Tony Lucchese shows up, I want to say Al Lucchese because I've only known this guy for decades and decades and decades. Tony Lucchese had a question about that's going to tie in here really well. So the operative thing is, if you don't have a couple of go-tos that are kind of your that are things that you that are your shtick. Then you're kind of subject to whatever happens to float into your brain on that given day. There's a fine line between the crap we repeat over and over ad nauseum and just kind of going, how do I take that and turn it into something that's kind of, because if we're really brutally, totally honest here, everybody wants to have a shtick. We didn't start this to just kind of go, hey, I signed up for mediocrity. How do I just become, what is his things? The best okay guitarist I know, or something like that. I've got a buddy that's his thing. It's very Anthony Best, lovely guy, ridiculous collection of gear, and he's actually not the best okay guitar player I know. He's far better than that. But the thing is that there is this fine line between what we've accomplished, what we see the path forward to accomplish, what we believe in, our confidence around that, and when we begin to take a thing, and this is. It's an interesting thing. I can do this without kicking any sand on people because that's not something I'm into. The most important thing for me, Jason, is having fun. And I know that seems incredibly juvenile, but when I pick up the guitar, I want to take myself and whoever happens to be watching on a journey around the playground on a big wheel, down the hill on a bike. Riding on the streets with an Enduro when I was 14 and borrowing my buddy's little Harley Davidson Enduro. There's just got to be a little bit of fun, and dare I say, just having a little bit too good a time. But and that energy is, I think, what we all love about guys like Eddie Van Halen, where there was just always, you looked at Ed and he was just having the best time. I'm like, I want to do that, right? And that sense of when I pick up the instrument, and hopefully when you pick up the instrument, how do we get the fact that we're having fun, or, if our posture, and there's nothing wrong with having a very serious posture. Notice I just kind of did this, the classical hand position and all that. There's nothing wrong with the serious thing. And there are times, right? You want to be able to kind of go into those places that are not, it would be really that. That just doesn't make sense, right? This is kind of like every heartbreak and every person that you've seen buried and all that, watching your mom take her last breath. That's where that stuff comes out. And you get a chance to express that through the music. That's not happy time stuff. And, so the point being is that when you have a couple of things that you can do, and one of the things I was thinking about sharing, so I'm really glad you kind of brought that up. Is there are different ways you can play a lick, and it really kind of, and I remember showing this to a student of mine, my buddy Jay, and I was like, try it like this. So I could play a lick. I go. I mean, it's just, so I'm much, and that doesn't mean there aren't times. And I remember, because lately I've been spending as much time looking forward as I have been looking back. And I remember being in like 7th grade, my buddy Greg Smith was telling me about this band ZZ Top, and that the guitar player did these pinch harmonics. And I remember starting off trying to play pinch harmonics, going, well, I'll get this at some point. And now it's such an integral. So literally, kind of this part that's always there. And so if you're looking for something to just kind of gently bring into your playing, or grossly overused like I do, but it adds this other kind of thing that really adds another layer of excitement. It's just another spicy flavor than just a note. And there are times, of course, and then, of course, there's the vibrato, which is kind of the icing on the cake. In any case, to answer the question, Jason, I had an incredible time. And, honestly, getting back to this kind of in the flow of things, by having that guitar ready to play at any point in the day, and I pretty much try and spend, and I've got a couple of pieces of course curriculum that I'm working on, including a book on theory that I'm actually going to talk about it with this amazing Lindy Day. So we're going to be doing basically essential theory for guitar. And we have so much fun around theory. It should be illegal. It's just because theory is awesome. And so we're going to get a chance to really make theory fun for people, because the reason it's fun is once you actually understand how all this stuff works and how it's put together, it just will change your perspective about how to just kind of unlock the guitar. And once you unlock the guitar, you unlock your creativity. And once you unlock your creativity, you have more fun. So, sign me up for the more fun part. And the thing about it is the theory is just kind of, it's an incredibly powerful tool that you can use to just leverage why the things you do that sound great, and why the things that you don't do great don't sound great. But that said, every gig you go into, is this going to be a night that I'm going to be in the flow? So I do everything that I can to basically live in the flow. And I encourage you to do the same. I'm going to also be putting together a separate on-demand piece of curriculum and probably a book around that as well, called 15-Minute Fundamentals, that a bunch of you have heard me ramble on about. But it's literally 15 minutes if you do it at 80 BPM and you do all the learned exercises, triads, modes, pentatonic, 7 chords, the things that you would need to have just kind of like as your staples. If you were making a guitar kitchen, all the things you would need to have in that kitchen, and just practice them every day at 80 BPM. That just keeps those things underneath your fingertips. And, I like to think of the day in three 8-hour blocks. Sleep for 8 hours, you're working for 8 hours, and then I don't know, whatever happens in another 8 hours. For me, I try and make those 2 8-hour blocks. I want to be playing as much of those 16 hours as I possibly can, and that is my mindset. But that is also, I'm fortunate enough to be able to do that, thanks to many of you. Tony Lucchese, good morning to you, my friend. Luis Olvera, I have not tried the Mark 7 head yet. I'm Doug West, the guy that is kind of the guy at Boogie, is a dear friend, and there are things that are here that I can't talk about. That's me being as close to being naughty as I possibly can, and I kind of like that. But my relationship with Boogie is probably about to become an official one, which I'm really excited about. So I have not tried the Mark 7. I will say this particular amp. So here, first of all, is channel number 1. And channel number 2. And channel number 3. I'll come back to that. I realize the level's a little lower. That is an amplifier. So basically, and Chris Alexander asked me about the rig, so I'm going to take that little segue moment. First of all, David Ritchie, hello. Mark Turvey, hello to you. I always feel good when I see you show up, my friend. Chaka, what's happening? Stanlin, hello. Brett, Adam, hello. Zach, good morning. William, hey, hey, hey. Scott, what's happening? Awesome. Uh-oh. Melissa's texting me. That can't be good. See message above. Doug, change the bottom half of your screen so we can see both hands. Ah, okay, got it. I'm going to talk about the rig here, and then I will change the bottom of the screen. So, okay, great. All right. All right, so this little bit of business here is, so let me get the exact question here. And again, Tony and Chris, thank you so much for the questions. A more complete rig, and we're going to say rig rockdown, because rig rundown is trademarked by my good friends over at Premier Guitar, and we do not want to kick sand on our friends' towels at the musical beach. So that's kind of why I had this little photo up here. So every Friday, there is a gathering here in the Bay Area. Mason from Vertex. So it's a really cool thing, gets together a bunch of folks, and we kind of, when I'm able to pry myself away from whatever it is that I'm fixated on at the moment, there's a bunch of us that get together and we go out for breakfast at 9 a.m. on Friday mornings. it's kind of a dude thing, but women are always welcome to come. But I think at this point, it's always been dudes, whatever. So Melissa's home, of course, watching the house with the guard dogs, just in case, anybody out there is like, hey, Doppler's not home then. It's just like, just saying. So the point being is that we get together and talk about gear, and Mason and I spent some time talking about this rig. So what you see behind me, first of all, oh, you know what? There's another piece of gear here that I didn't run through that I'm going to actually right now. Because when you hear the sound of this amp, somebody out there is going to go, holy flipping cow. So the challenge is, as amazing as the multi-channeledness of the JP2C is, and we're going to talk a lot more about that. I'm going to turn that down a little bit. That's a song called Tear Me Down, and that amp is going to be the sound of that, because that particular, pull the top end back, now that I'm sitting directly in front of this guy, let's try that again. That particular sound, that amp was headed on its way to reverb yesterday, and I just happened to plug in because whenever I sell something on reverb, I always test it out, and I kind of turned it on and just kind of went. Zach asked about, hang on, let me add that in there so I don't forget. So wireless, that's a great question, and that is one of the questions that I've been bouncing around my head. So hang on, let me put this all in caps down at the bottom, because I will come back to that, because that is a really, really, really important consideration. All right. In any case, the point being is that boogie, which I will switch back to now, this particular rig here. Another really good ritual to follow is never leave your volume control all the way up, which I'm usually pretty good about that. Something strange has happened here. What have I done? The boogie is angry at me because I played another amp in its presence. What in the world? Why are you kind of off there, not being all happy? Hang on a second, I'm behind the rig here, in case you hadn't noticed. You. That's very strange. It's totally bizarre. I wonder if that fixed that problem. That's strange. Well, if you want to know what the amp sounds like on its own, there you have it. That was channel 2, this is channel 3. And channel 1. Oh. idea what just happened, but I'm going to try a little something. Sorry, that was a very interesting thing. The anticipated... Let's try this. We just lost one half of the rig here. Hang on, give me just 1 second while I walk through here. This is a really good time to take a quick moment and talk about how this rig is laid out. So basically what's happening here is I needed to capture the sound of the boogie and do a little bit of math, and I kind of went, okay, well, if I want to have 2 cabinets and I want to have a stereo signal, but I've got 1 amp, how am I going to do this? I was working with the FM9 and working with my buddy Rich Doyle kindly loaned me a pair of boogie cabinets loaded with these Celestion full-range live response speakers. So I was going to do an FR, LR, as they say, as opposed to FR rig. But I just, as I was kind of getting closer and closer to the beginning of the, the packing phase to go down to Los Angeles, like, I'm still not where I want to be with this rig. And I found myself adding a lot of outboard EQ to try and make things right. And I just kind of went, you know what? Let me just take a shower, kind of like in the middle of the afternoon. I was grungy, and I was like, I just need to take a moment and press the reset button. And in so doing, I kind of went, okay, I'm pulling the plug on this. I'm going to storage. I'm getting my second boogie cabinet, and I'm going to use the JP2C, and hopefully that's going to be great. And for the most part, I've hardly ever used the third channel on this amp. I primarily only use the second channel. And so, because it's, for gear demos with a 7-string, it's just like the most ridiculous, monstrous, basically channel 2. And I've been hanging out a little bit with my dear friend Maddie, who is John Petrucci's tech, who when I did the demos for the Majesty, helped me out kind of recreating John's rig and actually shared John's presets and John's his settings on the Mark V, which is what he was using at the time, and some of his fractal presets very kindly. And so he and I had a little coaching exchange the other day on this rig, because this is essentially the Petrucci rig. It's the budget Petrucci rig. The point being is that I needed a strategy around how I was going to basically take one head and get a stereo effects out of it. So what I effectively do, you can't see it there in the photo, but you can see it right there. That is the cab clone IR. And basically what I'm doing is I'm coming out of the speaker out of the back of the JP2C, that is to say, the John Petrucci signature amplifier that Mesa Boogie makes. And to the best of my knowledge, they only either make that in a head or as a rack-mounted instance thereof. So the cab clone IR allowed me to, one, put a reactive load on the head, which means it did not need to have a cabinet. In turn, that went out mono into the input of the Axe effects, which is where it splits left and right. And in turn, that output goes into, if you kind of take a look just above the headstock of my Flying V down below there, that's the Seymour Duncan Power Stage 700 power amp, which basically is 350 watts per side. That takes this stereo output of the Axe effect, which is now blending the direct signal without any cabinet modeling, or that is to say, without any IRs, into the Axe effect. So it's basically the entire goodness of the amp coming after the power amp section. So all the things that you would want from the amp, but just the direct signal thereof. And then adding the Axe effects left and right afterwards, and then in turn running that into the power amp. Now, one of the really, really hugely beneficial things that happened that was kind of a happy accident was the moment I plugged it in and turned on the effects, I kind of went, I can't believe the clarity of the sound of the effects. Let's try a little bit of this. So as I kind of hang on those notes, traditionally, Traditionally, when you have the power amp section of the amp not only being responsible for making the tone kind of breathe and ebb and flow as it relates to the signal coming into it, the way the guitar is blooming in response to the sound coming from the speakers back into the pickups, all of that interaction, it compromises the integrity, in my opinion, of the effect signal, good, bad, or in between. It's a thing. So as soon as I was playing through this rig, because that's a class D power amp, which basically means it's solid state, which means it's running 350 watts, massive level of headroom. So to get that thing to distort, if I could, I'd have to play way louder than I would have been able to play in the venue. I wouldn't say louder than I've ever used it here, but you get to a point about 6 o'clock, or I should say about 2 o'clock, and you're like, it's flipping. When I got to the gig to do kind of the sound check and the run through with Neely's band, there's a drummer there playing really, normal drum loudness without a shield. So I'm like, fine. That was the other concern I had with where I was at with the other rig was like, I'm not quite sure what's going to happen when I need to sit in with Neely and I need to play at band volume. And that's where this rig in particular that I learned from John Bertucci, watching him at the camps, I'm not going to mention any names, but pretty much every amazing kind of modern / progressive guitar player, that has been at these camps, when they play, they're playing fractal and it sounds great into the PA. But the moment John starts playing, he basically pushes the air back in the room like this is like, and I was just like, it's just one of those things. And same thing watching Andy Timmons actually sit in at one of the Ibanez jams is when the boogie gets turned up, it's like a fist punch to the chest, and you're like, damn, it really, and it captures well on the audio, but in the room you really hear it just push stuff out of the way, and I'm like, I'll have what he's having. And that's kind of the thing about this amp is it's just like, without it being flubby, tubby, or washy, it just has a tremendous amount of impact, even with a kind of obscene amount of sorry about that. Gain going on. So the ability to kind of capture the nuance of the axe effects and was huge. So that was a big deal to me. So I'm going to stop there for right now because I could go further, other than to say the two Boogie 412 cabinets. It's like, holy cow. All right. So that is the rig for today. The wireless, I'm going to go there. I'm going to go out of order. It's a great question. So I am using Rapco Horizon cables. They are great. That's one of my current endorsements, and I've known those guys since the 90s. I tend to kind of like to make a nest someplace and hang out rather than jump between companies, which is why picking the right company makes a big difference. They sent me a bunch of cables back in the 90s, and I used them for a long time and then kind of started using some other stuff here and there. But recently kind of connected with my buddy Darius Seba, who's the kind of the vice president there. And he invited me back into the fold and sent me a bunch of cables, and I've been loving them. So basically all the interconnecting cables there and the guitar cable here, there's this thought about, kind of maintaining the most pristine signal you can, which is where wireless becomes kind of a question mark. The reality is if you A-B between many different types of things, I've got a second Flying V that's nearly identical, but it hasn't had, some of the other stuff changed out on it yet. But these two guitars will always sound different. So does one sound better? Maybe. But they sound different, which is a good thing. So the idea is if you plug in, and so there's going to be an interview that's going to be coming out that I did with Kirk Hammett's tech, Justin Crew. Amazing guy. He's worked with AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, and Metallica, to name a few. And so he was talking about kind of how they're using modeling. He's saying, look, it doesn't have to be the same as the amps. In many ways, that it's enabled them to solve the problems using the Axis FX3 of amps and speakers, and that different days, the speakers with the humidity, the speaker paper itself responds differently, the amps, tubes over the life cycle of tubes, all the things that happen versus you plug in a digital piece of device, it's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. That is a really, really big deal. As it relates to wireless, is if it sounds a little bit different, like with this much gain, is it going to compromise my sound enough that if it does, and the Line 6 stuff is really good, that I'm going to notice or care? Probably not. But that said, there is still that a little initial, and I've also watched. I actually, I watched a good friend of mine in a venue in Texas not that long ago have a bad wireless day where, for whatever reason, the wireless unit was acting up. The thing about using a cable is that this cable, until it breaks, is going to be, because eventually most cables eventually give up the ghost. They decide to move upwards and say, goodbye, Doug, we're done. And that happens, of course, because of a couple of things. One, as speaking of rituals, not putting the cable behind your strap, which means you're going to step on the cable, you're going to turn, and you're going to tension the cable at the point, at the solder points, even with the shrink wrap there, which is a big help. That's how you kill a cable. And you do that enough times, you'll kill any cable. So the point being is that, at least in that instance, and I have a theory about the concept of hot swappable backups. I've got my travel box now that has all my extra cables. I not only do I have one of everything, I got two of everything, because I don't want to be on the gig and have something go down. So that is also another ritual. So the point being is, if the wireless goes down and you're in the middle of it, or it starts, usually it'll crap out. Now the Line 6 stuff is really, really solid, but you just don't want to necessarily kind of get really used to that sound and all of a sudden go, wireless isn't happening tonight, I'm back to the cable. I don't know if I'm ready to make that level of commitment yet. It's a great question. All right, let's see here. Fun may be an understatement. Yeah, okay. I just lost auto feed. Mark, oh, Shaka, hey, what's going on? Hang on a second. And let me switch back to this view right here. There we go. Thanks for the reminder, Melissa. What was my rig like when I first started playing live? It's a great question. So first of all, I've used a number I've used so many different rigs over the years. So, and I've been doing this long enough. I would say my first rig was probably a Fender Vibro Champ. And it was nothing that you or anybody would probably have wanted to witness unless it was just out of charity. It was, kind of the progress I've made on the guitar. I always felt I had a certain level of talent, but it was very clear that if that was going to have a chance of expressing itself, I was going to have to put in a lot of hard work. And so, that's kind of where this whole in the flow thing comes. It's like, I want to be able to pick up the guitar on any day of the week and feel. I can kind of segue between the different. That I want to be able to pull off, and that means just kind of staying plugged in, right? So I've played through a bunch of different things. My rig for a long time was a JC120 and some stomp boxes into the front end. I also used to use a pair of Gorilla GG110s and an AB box, using those kind of going into the front end of the two different channels of the JC120, which seems like a crazy rig. but it allowed me to kind of have a clean channel and a dirty channel, and then kind of use different effects. So that is to say, one of my favorite things. I'm going to be doing some video content around this about rig hacks, basically of using a 2-channel amp and being able to use one basically as your high gain and medium gain channel, and the other is your clean channel. Where back in the old day, there weren't a million like Boss ES8 switchers. You had to kind of do all that legwork on your own. And modeling didn't exist as we know it. That was really kind of around the dawn of the ADA MP1 MIDI preamp, which Kirk Hammett was one of the early users of. So you kind of had to find some ways around it. So that is to say, there's one other rig that I used a lot around the Doppler effect album era, and that was a Marshall Valve State VS100. It's a solid state power amp with a tube preamp, and that amp sounded great. Clean channel, not so much, but the dirty channel sounded great. And that was an easy setup. I've still got the delays. I was using that with that. And that was a pair of Yamaha digital delays. I think they were the first MIDI compliant digital delays. And that rig, just for those of you that might have any of that old style gear around, basically on those old units, if you bypass the unit, the level would change. So if you just kind of left it engaged, the output level coming out of the unit was different than if you hit the bypass button, which is a problem in a live setting. So what I figured out to do was just to take, if I needed a quote-unquote dummy preset, I just turned the mix to 0. And when I needed effects, then I had another preset that had, that 17% or 30% or whatever, and then would use MIDI to toggle between the different presets. And so I got the 2 units to speak to one another. And so that rig served me really well. It was very simple, but worked really well. And one of the digital delays I would use either for chorus or for a super long delay, and the other one I just kept on a medium long delay. Great question. Okay, good. Good. Glad we haven't lost audio. And again, let's see. Slide. My slide. Where is? So there is going to be on the vocal EP. Thank you for answering that, Melissa. Where's my slide box? I am. Are you in the drawer here? Where are you? I'm kind of at the tail end of a really good studio clean where everything's going to live where it needs to live. But right now there's a small pile of stuff that lives on my desktop, which is not ideal. And so I have a particular Dunlop slide that I absolutely love. And I absolutely love playing slide, but I have a box with 5 billion slides in it that has sprouted legs or wheels or something and wandered off into the ether, which is really a bummer, because the thing about slide that I just absolutely love, at this point I'm desperate enough, I'm going to use something other than a slide. It's just such a great sound that, it just has a vibe to it. Let's see what I can do with a 9-volt. High string is always a little hard, especially with a battery. It's going from bad to worse. But one of the things I've also worked on is kind of developing a slidey, what I call the guitar harmonica. A combination of keyboard and harmonica and slide kind of sounds, and that's primarily around this right hand bit. So there will be more slide coming. I am the boogeyman, William. The boogeyman, right? Love that. All right, excellent, excellent. All right, thanks, Scott. Wireless. So yeah. So again, Zach, I'm kind of down where you are in the chat here. So those are the big pros and cons. Though, and that is an issue. I think at this point it's solid enough sonically that's not an issue. I just kind of having watched my friend kind of have in an environment where the wireless just did not want to perform, and it was clear that there was some sort of radio frequency that was messing with it, which in theory shouldn't have been happening, but it was. So kind of being on stage with somebody watching the wireless meltdown moment, I kind of went, maybe I am not ready to step into this yet. That said, the Metallica guys, again, hanging out with Justin via Zoom, like the Metallica, you can't do those shows without wireless, and they seem to be doing just fine. So, Sean, wait. Michael Mitchell, I'll see you on the other channel. Thanks so much, my friend. Sean, totally can hear the JP tone. I can only imagine what it sounds like in person. So, I mean, that's the thing about this amp is, oh, that's right. When I've got the second screen down here, you can't see the overlays. It's just a ridiculous tone. And one of the things that Maddie was saying in particular, like this particular second channel, is actually basically the the Mark II C+. Little out tune, my bad. Not everybody can afford a flippin' Dumble, but one of the things that Boogie is kind of famous for is the bloom, right? You think about Carlos Santana, and for those of you that might be close to my age, with the sustain that, let me put it away. This is my talking voice, right? And this is the amp volume. Talking voice. Amp volume. To have that kind of sustain and bloom and feedback at this volume is just, it's that amp. It's obscene. But the great thing is anybody can own this amp. So unlike a Dumble that you have to be a flipping bazillionaire to own, this is an attainable amp. It's like $2,500, maybe $3,000. I don't remember what the price is, but it's worth every penny of it. And it's just an obscenely good amp. It's a great amp. Yes. I need some cables. So awesome. Thanks, Sean. That'd be great. They're great. All right. James, hello. What is the most simple setup for me, amp and effects wise? I want to be careful how I frame this. I would actually say that it's this rig. Hang on. You'll get a better view over here. There we go. It's this rig. Now, I'm about to probably make it more complicated by adding 1 or 2 more amps. But the thing about this rig, and also I'm going to, again, make it more complicated by adding a PBC6X. This is from RJM. But this is going to allow me to have a bunch of stomp boxes in the front. And again, this is kind of a parallel conversation with going wireless. Petrucci, just like a bazillion slash, of the A-list artists. I'm pretty sure Neil Sean's using their stuff. The RJM stuff is the best pro-level gear in the business. And so they make controllers and switchers and all sorts of groovy stuff. So this guy is going to enable me to set basically 6 loops in the front where I can bring different stomps in and out and not compromise the integrity of my signal. Because for me, one of the things that makes this rig so special is the fact that that's the sound of the guitar going straight into the amp. There's a lot to be said about that. Giving that up, I want to be very careful about how I do it. So I kind of went, well, how are all the different things that I might do? I was thinking about using, kind of like the 4-cable method with the Axe Effect. I was thinking about using the FM9 that you can't see here as another way to get there. And then using the FM9 just in the front end and also using that as my controller. But I was kind of like, what do I really, really want? I want to use stomps. I want to use some of my favorite stomp boxes. I want to use some of my favorite fuzz boxes, like the Fuzz Fella, right? From Kyle Chase Stone. This is a great, great fuzz, and what it's got, what have we got? Feel, bass, and mids. So it means that you can fine tune this in a way that you can't some of the other fuzz pedals that are out there. And I actually have kind of two versions of this pedal. This one is the Woolly Fuzz Face, and he's got another one that he kind of labeled ZZ Top-ish, right? So the idea of being able to have those different tones to add on top of what I'm doing with the Boogie there is a thing. Also, in times when I don't want to have to bring this, having the UA, I'm going to try the UA Tweed guy. So to answer your question, simple rig. When you think about all the pedal boards that most of the people watching this probably have, I'm going guitar, amp. I'm using a capture box out of the back of the amp into my effects, stereo out into a power amp, into the cabinets. That's actually a really simplistic signal chain. There's a lot of badassery happening because of the quality of the gear, the components. But if you think about it, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cables. That's that's not an awful lot of patching. My guess is your average person has a lot more cabling happening in the pedal board in front of them, and if they're not using a switcher, they're going to have a much harder time doing some of this. I'm going to make this rig more sophisticated, which is going to mean that there are more moving pieces to make sure that I've got quality components that are going to be able to do their heavy lifting fail-safe wise. And once you start getting hooked on a pedal board, if you have some cable that decides to get pissy in the middle of a gig, then things only break at the worst possible times. So, which is why I travel with hot swappable backup stuff. I won't have a second pedal board, but I will have some extra cables with me just in case I need to. You can usually pretty easily identify a bad cable. The other thing is with a unit like this, because there's presets that are also sending MIDI back there, and also to the amp. The JP2C is MIDI compliant. That's it. Now, if you want to talk about simple rig, let's actually back up a step. One of my favorite things to do like this is kind of go straight into an amp. There are a number of great amps that are here that are perfect for that. Again, that sound that you heard there. There's an amp that's a prototype that I can't talk about. It's on loan from somebody. So that we won't be talking about, but that's another just like straight into the amp. I've got Gary Brower, my guitar tech, and he's Joe Satriani and Neil Shawns and Kirk Hammett's and James, and like everybody in the Bay Area pretty much goes to him. I was able to borrow the super reverb he's had in his shop for forever because it's just the most amazing super reverb. And I was like, can I borrow that? And he was like, sure. So that's here. There's a Wizard here. So in many ways, the sign of a great amp, especially a rhythm amp, is the ability to plug in and go direct into it. So there are times that it's just going straight into the amp and just having that. This Boogie, I can do this. If I want to, here is... Gotta have volume control. I'm still figuring out the 4 volume controls on this thing. I'm still learning bending too. Point being is that's one amp. I could show up at the gig with that in a cabinet. That little Thiel 112 cabinet, I'd be fine. So I realized that was really not a very simplistic answer, but there are a couple of different amps that I love. That depending on what it is, showing up with just a guitar and an amp is a great thing because it's really pure and there's nothing to get in the way. Great question. Sean, I know what you mean on the wireless. I have the G90. It's cool, but I can hear and feel the difference for sure in a live setting. One cool thing is it has a cable simulator, which is actually really cool. No, I mean, here's the thing is that the Line 6 guys are really smart and really good at what they do, and the cable simulation is a great thing. Sean, thank you for the kind words. Appreciate. Roland SDE 3000. So there's a conversation happening about the Roland. You said 1000. I've got an SDE 3000 over here. There's a conversation happening with a buddy of mine that is a gear influencer. I may be doing a demo with him, kind of around the new EVH SDE 3000 that Boss has come out with. So it would be a little premature. A little premature to talk about that yet, but I'm kind of excited about that. Pick gauge, great question. There we go. First rig, 77 through 79 PV Classic amp, Les Paul copy. That would be a great sounding. Was it a Lyle? What was your Les Paul copy? Pick gauge. I'm using 1mm Tortex, and that is a very important part of this whole. Very important part of this whole little equation, because for me, the sound of the. Hold on. Sorry. Let's get out of this scene right here. There we go. This whole little bit here with the right hand. That whole right hand thing, if I've got too much pick noise, you get a lot of the extra. And with certain picks, you can get chirp. I'm not down with a chirp. I want to hear the pick, especially when But I also don't want the sound of my pick. Sound dramatically different than when I go between legato and the left hand, doing the 90% of the work, and then the right hand where it's kind of tracking with the left hand, kind of 1-to-1. I want that sound to be similar. I don't want too much chirp. I don't want too much pick in the way. And the funny thing is, pretty much everybody's using the jazz picks these days. I'm an old school guy. I want to have enough control of that pick. I also want to have let's move over here. I want to have the ability to kind of have a little bit. And I need to have a little bit more distance, but that's my own thing. All right, Chris, what's going on? I tried to call you this morning. Good to see you, my friend. Flied with a 9-volt. I need coffee to cope with the reality of DD's awesome. You're too kind, my friend. Slide with a battery. Shocking! Hot top! I love that. 71 custom lead 3 cranks. I still have it in green selections. I love that. I have an S Les Paul. Come on. Daniel King, what's happening? Great to see you. King Henry, Daniel Henry. Hey, what's going on, my man? We had a nice little exchange around The funniest thing is I don't know if any of you saw my post on Facebook. There was somebody that very craftily created a fake ID on Facebook, and then took a white hoodie, and then took the Gear Garage logo and put it on there, and then messaged a bunch of people that kind of hang out with me on Facebook, trying to sell this white hoodie. It was really kind of crafty. So I kind of messaged a bunch of people. Was like, hey, you don't want to do it. So Daniel, hello, good morning to you, my friend. I'm here in Arinda. Good to see you, my friend. All right, let's see here. Mick Mars blames his performance problem due to wireless dropouts. He is suing the crew. They cut off his royalties. You know, the funny thing is, I'm not gonna dig into that mud, as tempting as it might be. But I will say, I've been thinking about, like, hey, if you look at the careers of some of the guys that I have known as guitar players, like Steve Vai and Joe Satriani, there's always been kind of some celebrity gig happening that kind of was a kind of a pivot moment in their career. And I was thinking, at some point, John Five, who's a flippin' great guitar player, I think he's going to be great in Motley Crue, but he has a tendency to kind of, he's about 2 to 5 years or so in a gig these days. I'm like, I wonder what happens with Crue after he moves on, because they've got great songs. I think they're going to keep touring for a long time. I'm like, I was on the treadmill kind of, I was going like, I would have fun playing that music, because it's got a certain kind of rock and roll vibe to it. Nikki Sixx can write a song like that. The same with Tommy, and so in any case, that's a whole thing. Oh, awesome, Daniel. And hold on, let me hold on. I need to just kind of do this. I'm going to have the other amp down below, because that way I can have comments. For whatever reason, the overlays are not overlaying when I have that other guy there. Had to order my first Mesa. Oh, now it's just tiny though. My first Mesa Boogie Mark II, blonde with a deposit before Matt. I was right there with you. I got a Mark IIB. I didn't get blonde. I was in a car accident when I was 15. My buddy kind of, and I broke a rib and a pelvis, and it was actually really kind of cool in a strange way. It was in a VW Bug, and I came to, and the telephone pole fortunately hit the back of the car right about 1.5 feet besides where I was. And I came to, and I'm looking at this patch of lawn with the back window of the VW Bug completely intact with the rubber still wrapped around it. I hit it so hard with my head, I guess you could say I'm hard-hitted, popped the window out, then my head came forward. I've still got a little baby bump, but not that big. And blood was coming down. I had my Aerosmith shirt that I got it the day on the green in 1978, covered with blood. The shirt was totaled after that. And I'm kind of looking out here, and as I came to, I'm looking at the window of the back window of the car, and I'm kind of going, you kind of know, it's like, all right, the motion has stopped. That's kind of interesting that the window didn't break, which, could have been really kind of unsightly. I could have been Scarface or something. In any case, Mike Saldano says Boogie copied his amp at 1WT. What 1WT? What is that? Amp half the price and sound, which is why the Boogie got the market share. I will say this without taking a swipe at Mike Saldano, who makes a great amp. First of all, I disagree. Because I know the story of Boogie. And again, I don't know that much about Mike Saldano. I've actually, of all the amps I've owned or borrowed, the Saldano, hello to Germany. The Saldano is on the list, but it hasn't kind of made its way here. Randall Smith grew up 2.5 blocks from me. He grew up tinkering with cars. He worked at a store called, I think it was called Prune Music, the Berkeley location, but I'm not 100% positive, but 1345 MLK, which is where a young Doug Doppler studied with a guy named Joe Satriani. And there was a meat locker that was there, which is where he had his shop. And that was where he started first messing with circuits. And then he moved over to Marin and hot rodded this Princeton, of which Fat Dog, a buddy of mine, has one of the original Princeton boogies, and my buddy Dr. Eric had borrowed that, and I was able to play through that amp. And in fact, I took that amp up to Boogie, and it said RS in pencil, or I'm pretty sure it just said RS, and I took it up there, and I had Randy verify that it was signature, and he looked at it. He's like, "Yeah, that's me." And he took a Boogie. He took this Princeton, took the 10-inch speaker out, put a 12-inch in, hot rodded it, and lo and behold, Carlos Santana hears about the amp, wanders into the shop, and the rest is history. That's organic, and that's kind of the way things happen in the Bay Area. So all respect to Mike Soldano, but it's just a different thing. And Randy has more patents for guitar amps than anybody else on the planet. So, and here's the thing: is like if you want to talk about, let's talk about Marshall. Like Marshall's circuit was basically a ripoff of the Basement. Everybody knows it. Who gets credit for the Marshall sound? Not Leo Fender. Not the amp guy that was working for Leo. Marshall. But they figured out how to put it in a big box and make it louder. Although the high-powered twins that are hiding back there will blow your hair back. Here's the thing is like amp guys, I was at the LA Amp Show a decade and a half ago. And I was sitting around a table at the end of the night, and it was with so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so. And watching these guys and like, oh, that thing you did there, and they're fishing for each other's trade secrets. It was like watching two guys play poker, then these two in particular whose names I won't mention. But it was fascinating just being a fly on the wall, just watching this go down. So, every amp guy thinks they build the best amp. And there's only one best amp that I've discovered thus far. And so I'm super excited about it. Exalted in a scam, yes. So, Sean, I see the switching. We are a generation of shred, my friend. I love that. And Daniel's asking, am I using the same we're not going to power the fractal? That's exactly what I'm doing. But again, one of the happy byproducts that I was not really conscious of was because I'm taking the direct, basically the post power amp dry signal of the Boogie, running that into the fractal. So the fractal is giving me left and right both. It's giving me a mixed signal of the direct sound or the dry. It's giving me a stereo signal of the sound of the Boogie and the effects. And so that's kind of how I had to do the math. Now, there's another hack I can do here that I'm going to try, which is because these cabinets are stereo, I can actually run the middle two speakers on each cabinet as just dry, and the effects left and right just wet. So running wet, dry, wet. I actually think I'm not going to like that as much, and it's going to present a problem for the next solution that I've got. And that's these guys. There you go, Doppler. Way to go. Well, I've now road tested my Cab M Plus. That's the original Cab M. Not passed the shake test. All right. So the deal is this is what I'm going to place in line between that power amp and that cabinet, so long as I didn't destroy it. It's been road tested. So that is going to allow me to choose the Boogie Dyne IR from our friends over at Two Notes. And then I'm going to be able to allow the front of house guy to take that output to go front of house, and I'm no longer going to be subjected to the mic placement or mics chosen by the front of house guy. I'm going to be like XLR. It means that I have total control of what's going into the board. Giant win. So that is going to be a big deal for me. So I'm going to probably have to build some sort of rack tray into there. But I've got one that's floating around, an extra one. There it is. Boom, boom, boom. So this sort of a dealio here. Sits in the rack there. This guy and its sister will sit there, and then it'll be ready to go. I may end up getting one that's like the one that's over here that you can't see, that's kind of connected there, or maybe just swapping that one out that's got a drawer, although that one's got a lip on the drawer, although that's not necessarily a bad thing. But that way those guys just live inside a drawer that's back there. But the point being is that will allow me to solve one of those things. So and the finger thing, Sean, it's a big deal, and it's just so neat to be able to do different types of things. I've seen Nicky on the 134 in LA in his black Ferrari, and he told me he is a songwriter. No, Nicky is a badass. So he did a record, and I actually, I at the Satriani camp in Vegas. Sorry, I'm a little off topic, but here we go. In Vegas, John Five was there, and as we were kind of all hanging out, I think doing the photos kind of around that. I'm having a conversation with John, who's kind of behind me, and I said, first of all, congratulations. Second of all, I'm so excited that you're in the band. There's a record that Nicky did with Michael Monroe, and he said, "Oh, I love that record." "Oh, it's one of my favorites." So I said, I'm so excited to see what you're going to do in terms of the next Motley Crue record. So Nicky Sixx is a brilliant songwriter for those of us that are into that particular thing, which I am. And so I'm really excited to see what John Five is going to do in the songwriting department, because Motley Crue, what you may or may not think of them, whatever, they can write some great songs. And Tommy's great on the ballads, So I think they're going to be, I think it would be really exciting to see a legacy band writing a record that people are like, that's as great as anything they did in the rearview mirror, because that's really hard for a legacy band to do. Find and express yourself. Love that. Okay. I've got some more questions over here that I've got buried over here in my notes. Okay, those were great. Thank you so much for that, Chris. When will the albums be released? Nesta Valdez, hello. Nice to see you. That's a great question. The album's being released this next week. Sure. So, how many of you, do me a favor, give me a holler out in the chat there. How many of you are in the midst of writing and working on your own material? Because for me, let's do this. Let's see. Let me pull up this loop. Give me just a moment. So that's the intro from a song called The Pink Sky. And the thing about the gig in Los Angeles was being able to take those songs out, in addition to the time in Texas, and then be able to play with the actual tracks from the album as stems. Thanks, Sean. Nandini, there we go. I am working on new material, but that is my dissertation. Material is my dissertation right now. I love that. No, you're saying you're working on new material, but the dissertation is your material, but not musical material. Sorry, I'm a little slow. So, Michael, love that. Tom, love that. Okay, excellent, excellent. So the thing is that the way, so this is specifically for anybody that's out there either wanting to craft music, is in the process of crafting music, has been doing it for a long time, or is wanting to come back to that. Excellent. Working on writing guitar parts for a new album for the Golden Cage, or new album, The Golden Cage. Awesome. So here's the thing, is that traditionally what we do, most of us, we sit in our studio, our little isosceles triangle with us in our monitors. We may hear the bite. We may or may not have some other people involved, but for the most part, it's us, some drum loops, our bass, and our guitar, and maybe somebody that sings other than us. So we sit here, and we traditionally will take the song and record it section by section. Very rarely will we actually go through the whole thing. So, and this was one of the giant mistakes I made on the first set of recording sessions for the instrumental EP, was I went in and I hadn't played these songs really from start to finish, which, I knew the parts, but, it took me a minute to kind of, as we were rehearsing the band, I'm kind of like, wow, I kind of missed that memo. Yeah, sure. No, I mean, it's like we all suffer from digital guitaritis. It's a great advantage, but at the same time, there are things that happen in the process that are unexpected outcomes that aren't always the best one musically. So we've pieced these things together, of which there's no shame. And at some point, I'm going to do some kind of recording tip thing, of which is loop a section for 5 million bars, which is what I have a tendency to do, and double track the rhythm, and cut and paste it so you can play it and just sit there and play over the top of it and put it in record, and hope something comes out that you want to keep, and then do that for each of the different sections of the song, and then start piecing all that stuff together. But most of the Doug, hey, what's going on, legend? Hey. And the thing is that most of the time we don't actually play the song from top to bottom, and so the ability to then sit there in the studio, you've cut and pasted this whole thing together. Come on, let's be honest. You've never actually probably played it from top to bottom, which is really kind of insane if you think about it, kind of going, wait a second. How does, what do I have to do? What button do I have to press? But because we're in the studio, we got modeling, we got punching. We don't have to think about those decisions until we step out of the studio and kind of go, how am I getting from point A to point B? So I really, really wanted the experience of sitting there and working in a live environment, ruminating on the songs, looping sections, feeling what it was like to present that material in a room, feeling what it was like of how my guitar, I responded to those songs in a live situation, which is very different than me sitting in this chair. It's like I'm going to do things where I'm going to start to, feel things, and I'm feeling my way through the track as opposed to if you were listening my way through the track. That is to say, it's not like I'm listening or not feeling in either of those other environments, but live, you're responding to the audience, you're responding to the moment. And I really wanted to use the song and the moment to juxtapose what it was that I was going to do, and then in turn take some of those decisions and that feedback back into the studio. What I found is that process is a slightly elongated process where literally this little business and but the thing is now, when I go to play that, I'm going to loop that section, but I'm going to play just variations where I'm riffing on it. And I pretty much I ended up documenting and doing a little video for the one that is really close to the final version, but I can now just kind of... There are certain little pieces that are non-negotiable, but the rest of it... And for the band, when they hear me go... will know because July 18th and 19th, the band, the drummers coming up from Los Angeles, the incredible Angeline. Sarah is just going to come over from Marin, and we're going to sit there and we're going to kind of workshop these songs. And the great thing about having played these songs, and at this point I will have should have finished much or all of the recording, but the point being is learning to live and evoke them as opposed to just trying to get a take. There's a big difference between just trying to get a take that you're happy with and really kind of going, I want to look back on this recording and go, I took as much time as I needed to realize the parts as well as I'm going to end up growing into playing them live, which the only way I could do that was by playing them live first. That's a big deal. Digital guitaristness. Absolutely. The great thing, Eric, that's a great question. How has the Seymour Duncan Power Stage colored the sound, or if at all, to paraphrase? Not at all. And that's the thing I love about it. If you listen, you hear that. That's the power amp inside the boogie, just kind of doing the classic power amp thing. So it's just this little kind of imperfections that I just love. So in any case, what I mentioned earlier that you might have missed, great to see you regardless, is that I'm taking basically the captured signal of the boogie after the power amp section via the cab clone IR, and I'm running that into the Axe effects, splitting that left and right. So then you kind of have a left and right mix of the raw sound of the amp with the effects, and then in turn going out to the Axe effect, and then going into the two cabinets. And that's kind of, for me, the magic stuff. Pharaoh, what's going on, my man? I look forward to seeing you in Montgomery. That's awesome. You are, besides the promoter of said event, the first person that I know that's coming to that gig. So thank you very much. I really look forward to seeing you. It's going to be an awful lot of fun. We're also going to be doing a fractal clinic. So I'm really excited about that. So awesome. Look forward to seeing you there. Nesta, have I ever met or play with Luhar? No, I haven't. And I'm not familiar with them, but I will make a little note. Who are they? Luchar. Sounds like sugar, but not. All right, Eric was going to Andy Guitar. Question. Great question, by the way. Would the virtual capo work when the fractal is in the loop of an amp? I've noticed Larry uses that feature, but he runs the fractals exclusively without an amp. It's a great question. So the way that I am using the virtual capo, or will be potentially using the virtual capo, which is post-amplifier, backing up a step. First of all, Andy, always a pleasure. Hello, a fellow ear training geek. The idea is to capture every bit of essence of the boogie amp and just kind of take a snapshot of it. And then by running that out in the cab clone IR without actually using the IR, I've got a really great boogie approved tap of that tone. Turn that's going into the fractal mono, which means that's a great time for me to just be able to insert the virtual capo. So that song that I played a little bit before. So this riff is the riff from that song. So in any case, that is supposed to be in C sharp, but this is obviously an instrument that's strung to E. So I actually spent some time working with that, playing that in C sharp, so that I will probably use the virtual capo on that song, and then kind of transposing where I'm playing the rest of this thing here up to here. But for this last show, I just kind of just kept it in the guitar and standard tuning, didn't use the virtual capo. But it sounds really, really good. Step and a half is a long way to go, bringing the guitar down. But if you think your average virtual capo is going to bring it down a whole step, an extra half step beyond that isn't that bad. So I almost undoubtedly am going to start doing that for that song, so I can play the rhythm part, which I love doing. Sean, do I have a Photoshop schematic of my rig and share? So can this be used with Kemper setup? A super dirty. Awesome. First of all, thank you, Sean. So the answer is yes, yes, and yes. And the thing that I'm also trying to figure out, well, what's going to happen as I need to fly? You can't quite see it, but I think right there is a Boogie Mark 525 that I can actually carry on to a plane. So for the Nashville, Muscle Shoals and Alabama, Montgomery shows, and I'm about to start pushing that stuff out to socials. So you'll be hearing more about the dates and all of that, including the fractal clinics that are happening around the Muscle Shoals and the Montgomery gigs. I'm looking at the different ways I can do this. Larry, because as you pointed out, is a very much in the box kind of guy. I think I'm purposely going to try and either bring that Boogie there and figure out what I'm going to do for cabinet, or have the folks at Gibson/Boogie. There are advantages to have a company like Boogie being now part of the Gibson family for somebody like myself that is as enamored with this gear. And it means that I probably am going to be able to end up getting, if there's one of those that's in their loaner setup in Nashville, I have as good a shot as any, given I've got some time to make that request. So ideally, I'd be doing that, and then talking about how I use this hybrid rig. And there's another part of my setup that I'm not going to have time to get into today because I have 21 minutes before my first lesson starts. By the way, I am taking students, just in case you are interested. DougDoppler@gmail.com is how you find me. So I teach on Saturdays and Sundays, so boom. So the thing about, yes, you could do this with a Kemper. I actually think the thing about the Axe effects that was why I made this choice was there were some things about the effects that are just out of this world. And so I will be doing a longer form video on this, what I'm trying to figure out. Generally, the rhythm is one a week around some piece of gear, whether it's an individual amp, whether it's a rig. Initially, I was going to do a rig of the week. But in some ways, sometimes I'm just going to plug into one amp, and I'm just going to talk about that amp rather than a rig around it. So I got to kind of figure out, maybe it's just welcome to Doppler's Gear Garage. This week we're doing blah, and then in turn, if there's a rig setup, I will have a diagram such that will be there. It will, as you pointed out, there will be a need to set up a PDF, and that's also an opportunity for me, dare I say, to grab email addresses, because there is a business side of this business, and I'm going to be getting increasingly better at that stuff. All right, Andy, so you could guitar into amp, preamp, fractal in, and use as a virtual cable. That's right. Yes. Larry goes down a perfect fourth, right? So here's the thing. So long as you're not taking a split that is splitting it off before the fractal sends a signal back to wherever, either going into the front end, going into the PA, going back into the power amp, going left and right. So long as all those out spots do not have a side output, a side chain, if you will, that goes to a separate destination, you can use it in all those places. And arguably, it may sound, you know what? This is an interesting thing is that the great thing about, okay, so actually here's the thing, is that if you were to use it before the power amp section, part of the thing about this Boogie is that there is some power amp, one of the things, because I'm using it with a load on it, I do have it turned up a little bit, not crazy loud. So I am getting some love from the power amp section. That's where some of the, the body and the warmth and some of the give and the take of what make this setup so dynamic. As much as I'm using a high amount of gain, which does add a natural amount of compression to things. But the point being is that uh, the ability to take post power amp section and any of the sag and all the cool stuff that's happening there, and then run the virtual cable out into a solid state power amp, any of the artifacts that you would potentially be adding a little extra distortion to from the power amp section of the amp, you won't get that. So that is to say, for example, if you took a Boss OC fill in the blank 2 and you run that into a clean amplifier, it sounds a lot better than when you run into a distorted amplifier into the front end, because it really picks up a distorted amp, that is, on the glitches that are happening in there, and it amplifies them in a not ingratiating way. So that's one of the reasons I love the Boss OC2s, which is what I've gotten. I know they're up to like an OC5 or something like that. But the glitches, even when you're just kind of using one octave down going into the front end of a distorted amplifier, are kind of a no-go for me. It's just kind of, it's more of a distraction than a help. So that's kind of the line that I draw. It's a great question. So, Sean, yes, the traveling with tone and we'll own Axe Effects for sure. Awesome. So, first of all, the Kemper stuff is great. And I've got Kemper rack, a Helix rack, obviously the Axe Effects 3 and the FM9. So, kind of like and there's a Headrush M5 floating around here. And then there's various other Helix footprints, if you will. So I'm kind of down with all the modeling technology. It's just that there are certain things that are in the back end of the the fractal technology that I can. I'd love to know what happened to my second output here. I wonder. Hang on, I need to just kind of see if I can solve this little problem here real quick. Let's power you down and pack up. Let's do that over here as well. I don't have any idea why I've lost this side of things. Maybe that'll solve that. So just what you guys, I'm doing, I just basically unplugged and replugged everything in. And probably before I do any of that, I should just kind of do. And the other thing is, every so often, just this little bit I'm doing here for any oxidation you might be having, and let's bring the level back up. I don't know what happened to my. No, I've lost that side. I wonder. I'm gonna. Oh, okay. Hang on a second. So this is a cute little trick. I'm now reversing the left and the right. My thought is, I've lost one side of my power amp. Or I've had a cable failure. But I really doubt that's the case. That's totally bizarre, and it happened in the middle of the show. How about that? Well, that's how, as I said before, if anything's going to go wrong, it's going to happen in the middle of some important moment, because you guys being here is an important moment. So it's an interesting thing. Nessa, I haven't tried the Tonex yet. I am chomping at the bit to try the Tonex. I think it's great. You can do captures via tone match in the Fractal, but the Tonex is, kind of from everything I've heard, is kind of the easiest in and out for doing. Actually, I will say the Quad Cortex. I've got a Quad Cortex too. Sorry, I left that out. That's also a great way to be able to do great easy captures. So I haven't used it yet, but it's on my list. And then Andy, I wish they would bring a version that is just like the good old multi-effects units without all the amp and cab things in it. That would probably bring the price down as well. It's an interesting thing, and I've got 14 minutes here, but I'm gonna rabbit trail on that. We have all had equipment troubles at some point. Yeah, I think I lost a side of the power amp here because it was just working, and then it wasn't. And I can tell where it is in the signal chain, and then I did that little trick. So just let me explain what I did for those of you that ever have something like this happen. It seems like an obvious thing, but you're like, okay, let me turn the volume down on the power amp, Let me swap the cables between the left and the right hand side. We know everything in the signal chain is working on that side over there. So let's take that cable and plug it into the other side, into the other input. And that didn't, that didn't solve the problem. So my guess is we've lost one side of the power amp, which generally once something fails me like that, I'm just kind of like, I'm glad that didn't happen on the gig. But it's entirely possible that the cable. So here's actually, you know what? You guys are going to get a chance to watch exactly why. Hold on, I'll show it to you. The gig box. So again, gig ritual. There's the gig box. So this has everything that I need to take with me and hot swappable backups. This is the extra cable for the foot switch for the boogie. And so an extra speaker cable. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap out. First of all, I'm going to bring the volume down and I'm going to power down the power amp. That way we're not going to get a pop. And I hope this is more than just entertaining for some of y'all out there. But now literally what I'm doing is I'm doing what I would do on the gig if this went down and I had a minute, that I could actually pull this off, because I am, welcome to Doug Doppler's Tech. Nice to meet you. I am guitar tech and amp tech and gear tech. So now I'm going to swap out the cable and let's see if that solves the problem. I actually am of the belief that it's not going to, but I don't know. Let's find out. All right, power's back up. This is also the time where it's really easy to forget to bring the volume back up. So, and I think I can hear a little gentle buzz only coming out on one side. Yeah, we lost the right side there. Oh wait, no. That's the other thing to look for. Aha. So watch the output on the fractal. There's only, on the output, it's only coming out one side. What the flip? All right, this is going to solve the problem. I have no idea how this happened unless I did some wacky key command. I have no idea. Wow, that's so bizarre. So the balance, all right, so I don't know what I did inside the GUI, but I managed to do some little key command that sent, and I'm glad that I was able to solve this. And chances are this would not have happened if I had not been using the GUI while I was farting around here on screen. But now, I'm in stereo again! All right, so that is to say, I've now got 9 minutes until my first lesson. All right, so good. Okay, yes, key commands. I'd love to know how that happened. All right, so to get back to Andy Guitar's question, in looking at, because somebody just mentioned Neural, who was that? Brett. If you look at Neural's model and the fact that they've got a Petrucci plug-in, the fractal universe of Fractal had a plug-in, because that's kind of one of the things I was thinking about. It's like, it'd be great if they had a plug-in. And two, it'd be great if they just had a stomp box. But pretty clearly, knowing Matt Picone reasonably well, I think they have a vision which is like, this is what we do. This is our lane. They, in my opinion, make the best effects. I'm going to just give a quick little demonstration here, because here is just the I'm going to turn the level up here. And bring this over here. Oh, I see. It ate my diffusion. All right, so what I've got, I'm going to bring the mix up. And now... Oh, wow, totally. All right, that's okay. I must have somehow switched scenes. All right. In any case, let me just kind of get to where I think home base was, which is this little bit now. Where are you? I'd love to know what I did to get there. No, sorry. This is me kind of being an idiot. Because I've already saved this preset, and it's just... All right, in any case. All right, now we'll be back with... So when I bring up this delay here, one of the things I can do, there's the delay. And there is what's called diffusion. And so what it's doing is, here's my... Oh, hang on. There you are. Hi. The delay is turning to reverb. Try that with any other... So you get the initial of a delay, and then it turns into a reverb. I'm like, what the hell? It's like, it's so incredible. And it means that you can fine-tune that experience of figuring out kind of what kind of wash that you've got. Literally, with the diffusion control, you're turning the delay into reverb. Like, who the flip thinks of that? It's ridiculous. All right, I got 5 minutes. First of all, many thanks to everyone that hung out today. I thought we had a lot of fun, and I had a few rabbit trails, which I love doing, in case you hadn't noticed. But nice to see some new faces hanging out, or just some folks returning and all that. I love doing this. Really appreciate your hanging out with me. Hang on a second. I've got 5 minutes, but I didn't... let me just make sure I've answered the last questions in here. All right. It's usually a cable every time. Boogie is a work color since my live my triple rec and 290s. Awesome. Great. With pleasure, Sean. I hope to catch a show soon too. Brett, Neural DSP has a Petrucci archetype that sounds amazing. Great fly rig, be your in your system with a foot control to operate live. So here's the thing: is I have thought, because you bring up a great point. Well, at what point are people going to, really jump into playing a computer live? So let's just go through a worst case scenario, because I'm always thinking, like, you just kind of witnessed, like, something went down in the middle of quote unquote the gig, because in many ways, people tune in, like, if I'm sucking. And by the way, the other thing that started happening is something happened, and I don't know what I did, but it's either changed preset or hit an undo that did something strange to a saved preset on the Fractal, because I was playing through it this morning. And the Fractal has been 100% robust, but something happened to my settings. I'm like, oh, I'm now all of a sudden here. I don't know what I did, but the point being is, when the gremlin sort of stuff starts happening on gig, it's scary. So the first thing I think about a computer is, every time I see somebody using one for loops, the thing I'm like, well, I wonder how long it's going to take for that thing to bounce off whatever the stand is on and for it to fall. Or number two, and we've all had this happen, oh, I forgot my wall wart, or I forgot my cables. So you're freaking out, looking at this thing, wondering how long it's going to be before the thing dumps power and just turns off. And you got a giant pop through the PA, and you're done. I'm never going to do it. And I know never to say never, but I'm just like that. The whole liability of a computer, I don't want to put my show in a place where there's that type of vulnerability, where because then you're done. You're like, oh, sorry, I'm an idiot. Good night. That's really not the experience. And part of the whole thing about doing a great show is afterwards you go out and you hang out and you talk with people, and you let them know how much you appreciated their coming. It is also a good opportunity to let them know that you have merchandise available, and that is how you pay for gas and hotel and food, to the next venue, or to and from on a gig like we did in LA. It's a vital part of that thing, as opposed to feeling like you're wandering out there just having failed people because they paid money to come see you play, and your gear totally failed. Melissa's messaging me with something. Brad has to let you know he cannot do his lesson today. Oh, got it. All right. I figured as much. Thanks, love. So the point being is that I first of all, the neural plugins sound amazing, but, and this is the giant but, and I'm trying to figure this out because there will be a video on this as well, other than this type of rig, and I'll figure out what I did here. But like my preset, there is an undo function that you can do with the fractal stuff. So it's perhaps I don't know. I'm not sure what I did. And I'm actually hopefully humble enough to go, I don't know what I did. Something happened. And so the point being is that you want to prevent as many of the gremlin type of experiences happening, and just go, of all the things that can go wrong, broken string, stepping on the cable, radio interference with your wireless. I mean, there are all these gremlin things that you go, which one of those is going to happen tonight, and which one of those am I going to prevent from happening because I've got my stagecraft together enough such that I'm not letting that happen. So in the last minute, I just want to say thank you again for hanging out, and really appreciate the interaction. What else would I do on a Saturday but talk about gear and triads? We didn't get to the triad part, but we'll talk more theory geekery when I see you next week. Thanks so much for hanging out. Always a pleasure. Make it a great one, and happy Father's Day to all the fathers and dog fathers and cat fathers, for that matter, in the house. All right, y'all. I will see you on the flip side. Thanks so much for spending Saturday morning with me.